If you've been anywhere online over the past few days, you're likely to have seen articles claiming that James Gunn's Superman movie is so great that it made $125 million in clean profit at the box office and that it also performed much better than Zack Snyder's movie Man of Steel from 2013. And if you ask me, these false, well-orchestrated fluff pieces haven't just popped up organically. I believe that this rather deceitful narrative we're seeing right now is part of an ongoing PR push initiated by Warner Brothers themselves to paint Gunn's DCU launch as a much more successful endeavor than it really is. And there seems to be so much desperation to sell this spin to the public that some legacy media and access shills are even willing to fabricate actual numbers in order to support it. And when people ask me, well, why would the media and Warner Brothers lie about this and potentially misrepresent the actual numbers? I would say that there's a number of reasons for that, and in this video, I'm going to be going over all of them, while also giving you a general update with everything that's currently happening with James Gunn's DCU right now. As you may have already noticed, Warner Brothers has been doing rather decently this year at the box office, especially in comparison to some other studios. But even with that success, there's still a huge corporation with investors and shareholders, and that corporation, if you didn't know, is still currently in $34 billion of debt. And while obviously they aren't expected to cover that debt by tomorrow, it's also not exactly a negligible amount of money either. So right now for Warner, any bad press that could negatively affect their stock price is something they don't want, and it appears that they would go to great lengths to stop that from happening. And why is James Gunn's Superman so important to them? Well, because DC is a well-known IP, and for a high-profile movie like Superman, they have to show that there's a concrete and successful cinematic franchise that they're building for in the future, in order to positively influence public perception towards their studio by any means necessary. So publicly, they really want the optics here to look great, even if underneath the surface, things aren't necessarily as great as they're being presented. Now, if you recall, I've mentioned in my previous videos just how aggressive Warner Brothers has been in dictating the type of press they're getting, and like many other big Hollywood studios, they're paying millions of dollars every year to have the best PR people in the industry make sure to protect their image. And these expensive PR specialists, they're all very much a part of the same swamp. They all have their personal connections within the legacy media and the Access Shill network, and for the right price and with the right relationships, there's a lot of political maneuvering and mutual back-scratching behind the scenes. That's exactly the reason why for the past several years we've seen so many favorable PR narratives manufactured as part of damage control, especially for studios like Disney's Lucasfilm and Marvel. And now we're seeing it with Warner Brothers and James Gunn's Superman movie. And for those detractors in my comments who frequently complain why I keep reporting on this story, it's mainly because I don't like it when the media tries so hard to manipulate a story, so my goal is, if nothing else, to present a more balanced analysis of this entire situation. And if you want to support the efforts of an independent news source like myself, please take a second to like and subscribe, as that type of support would really go a long way.
Do it.
One of the things that's really bothered me since the release of James Gunn's Superman is how many times the media has repeatedly tried to explain why it's a success, even if it doesn't seem that way. Because if a movie is undeniably successful, then everybody knows it, and there's not really much more that needs to be said about it. You don't need 500 articles and think pieces to establish that you have a winner on your hands, because when you truly have a winner, the numbers easily tell that story. For example, this summer Jurassic World Rebirth has made $860 million worldwide. So there really isn't much to contemplate about. Nobody's wondering if it was a flop or not, right? Well, with James Gunn's Superman, the results obviously don't speak for themselves. And that's where the problem is. Prior to the movie's release, even the most generous industry trades claimed that Superman would need to make at least $700 million just to break even. And I take this as a sign that everybody knew what numbers James Gunn needed to hit for this to not seem like a flop. Something that he obviously didn't do. Since we know that there's a lot of shenanigans that go on these days with studios reporting numbers, I personally believe that Superman actually needed between $800 to $1 billion to break even. And the fact that he was barely even able to crack 600, let alone surpass Zack Snyder's Man of Steel box office take from 2013, even before adjusting for inflation, says a lot about the size of this failure. And again, don't trust me, let's listen to what Grace Randolph had to say about it.
Now, it could end in the 600 million range. That would be a disaster. That would be a
somebody else should take over DC.
And that's the main reason Matt Reeves got his sequel instead of James Gunn's Bold and the Brave movie that he already announced and then never talks about anymore. For anybody who's clearly looking at what's happening here, all of these are not positive signs, no matter how hard you try to present it that way. And once I see the likes of Variety and John Campea trying to run interference for a major studio's box office disappointment, it becomes even more of a red flag. And this also applies to the whole fishy announcement about the so-called Superman sequel that's seemingly been greenlit. I've seen some people say that since the announcement came at record speed, it's a clear vote of confidence in James Gunn's DCU, but that's just a load of silly nonsense, because again, if a movie is an undeniable hit, nobody is wondering if it's getting a sequel, but rather when the sequel is coming. Once again, I barely heard anything about Jurassic World Rebirth getting a sequel, but I don't need to hear anything about it because who are we kidding? It was a box office hit, and there's absolutely no way that Universal isn't going to produce a follow-up dinosaur movie. We don't need to see 500 articles about it, we just know it. And I'm sure that if James Gunn's Superman movie made between $800 million to $1 billion at the box office, they could have announced it immediately or 6 months down the road, but it wouldn't have mattered because everybody would have known that a sequel was coming. It was in fact Superman's underperformance that they even had to announce a sequel to begin with, to quickly squash any online chatter of Superman being a disappointment, especially since there's other movies on the DCU slate that are currently filming and are part of James Gunn's DCU, along with some TV shows he's making. You have Supergirl that's already being filmed, so they can't back out of that. And then you have Lanterns that's also currently in production, and they can't cancel that. Same with Clayface. These projects, they want them to do well, and if they would have waited and they would have said, we're not sure we want a Superman sequel, what does it mean? That those projects are lame ducks, and they probably didn't want that. So what do they need to do, especially for public perception? They have to show that they have faith in James Gunn and his whole DCU plan. That's why they announced this other movie, which I don't know if you've noticed isn't really a sequel to Superman, but in my opinion, more of an Avengers-type movie, where they're going to include Lex Luthor, Supergirl, the Justice Gang, Lobo, the Lanterns, and maybe Peacemaker too, to try to create this kind of shared universe movie, hoping that somehow it'll have the same type of effect that the Avengers had. It's also a way for them to show that there's absolutely no DC crisis whatsoever, easing any concerns their investors or shareholders may have, and keep in mind that this Man of Tomorrow movie can still get delayed and maybe even cancelled at a later date, although I think they'll actually go through with it. Maybe they figure, we'll give James Gunn a chance. If he can show that this shared universe really does deliver some kind of results, then that'll be fine. And if it doesn't, if Man of Tomorrow and Supergirl don't deliver the kind of results that they want, I have a feeling that that'll be the end of James Gunn's DCU, and by giving the DC Batman universe over to Matt Reeves, they've narrowed James Gunn's scope to only deal with Superman moving forward, which is why he pivoted creatively to only work on that, and that's why he's calling it the Superman Saga, something that he didn't initially refer to it as. And when it comes to all these bogus articles about Superman outperforming Zack Snyder, for anybody that knows basic math, that's absolute nonsense as well. Right now, it's pretty common knowledge that Zack Snyder's movie had a $225 million production budget and a $150 million marketing budget. And although I don't believe them personally, these are pretty much the same numbers that the Access Media is claiming Gunn had for his movie. And let's say I give them the benefit of the doubt. Even if they don't deserve it, let's look at this in the most simple way we can. If both Gunn and Snyder's movies had the same spend, but Snyder made $50 million more at the box office, even before adjusting for inflation, Snyder made more money than Gunn. It may have been less than what the studio wanted from Snyder, but he still made more than Gunn, if we're being honest. And now even these type of shills like Jeff Snyder are actually saying that this $125 million number is actually based on other revenue streams such as merchandising, sponsorships, and streaming. But this also doesn't prove that Gunn outperformed Snyder.
Think about the ancillaries, right?
Right.
That's where the $125 million is coming from.
Because Snyder made a good amount on sponsorships, merchandising, and physical media sales, which were significant. The way you decide if a movie is a box office flop is if you look at the box office receipts and it turns out that the tickets didn't cover the production and marketing budgets of your movie. And James Gunn's movie did not cover that. That's why you're seeing the Access Media and the shills doing all these kind of mental backflips, moving goalposts and trying to explain why this is good, even though it clearly isn't. And for those of you that write in my comments, oh, you're a Snyder bro, I'm a Gunn bro, I don't really care about any of that stuff. My favorite Superman movie to date was the 1978 Richard Donner movie with Christopher Reeve. But it doesn't matter what I like or what my preference is. What matters is that I'm trying to report on a story, and I'm really kind of tired of having to argue with all these people in my comments that like a movie and think that because they like it, I have to pretend that it did better than it did. And that also applies to the Access media and to all these shills. And that's why I keep reporting it, because I want to be as honest as I can with people. And if you want to keep receiving these type of DCU updates from an independent news source like myself, please like and subscribe, as it would really help my channel. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. But I'm